Hey, check it out. In this video, we're going to talk about muddy colors. Why does it happen? Why is it considered bad or good or whatever? And most people won't tell you the actual reason why. They just repeat the same explanation or pattern of thinking that previous people have passed on. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something that's going to open up your eyes. I'm not joking around here. Okay, this is the truth. Okay, now I've been an artist all my life. I should mention that. So I've been observing things in life all my life and developed the skill to discern between one detail and the next detail. And I realized that that's what we're doing. That's what everyone is doing. Their minds are programmed a specific way to want to see distinctions, to see what one thing is versus what another thing is. Okay, and in muddy colors, what we consider muddy, you have a mixture of like multiple colors or aspects of reality that conflict with each other, that kind of cancel each other out and make it confusing for your mind to discern between what one thing is and another thing is. Okay, so as you can tell, most people don't speak or talk about it in this specific way because they don't truly understand it. They're just repeating what other people have said. Okay, now so let's get into it deeper and actually get into some interesting stuff. Okay, so stuff that will kind of make you question what's going on around you. All right, now that's what I want to do here. That's what I've been trying to do all my life, is figure out what exactly is happening in the universe. Why are things such a way that they are? Okay, now I've come to a realization that there are patterns. There are patterns to everything, and some patterns you could say they're designed by humans. But no, you can see the patterns in everything, in matter, in the atoms, in the molecules, how they're all arranged in specific ways. And think about it. Our minds want to identify what one thing is versus another thing. And to do that, our mind has to recognize the patterns. It has to find a distinction between one thing versus another thing. What's different? What's the same? Okay? So when you look at the color wheel, for example, the color wheel is it's arranged in a specific way that provides a sense of order and structure to it, a way that's clear, that we could see one color versus another color versus another color. What's different about it? What's the same? You have the yellow, red colors, which are warm. You have the blue colors that are cool. You have the green and magenta that are neutral, right? So they're all arranged a specific way that makes sense, that you could kind of trace it. You could follow the pattern related to the visible spectrum of light, right? Okay, so our eyes are designed a specific way to absorb those wavelengths, and our eyes are more interested in the reds, the blues, and the green wavelengths. Okay, and how the percentages and mixtures of those together determine the colors that we see, whether it's like a yellow or a green or magenta or blue, cyan, that sort of thing. Okay, but notice how we like to categorize things and create distinctions. So we put them into like which ones are warm versus which ones are cold feeling, and then we try to find the scale between them, right? One side and another side. So there's always this sense of sides to everything, because our perception needs to be able to discern between what one thing is and another thing. I know I'm kind of repeating myself here. You can't escape that, I've realized. I've been an artist all my life. I want to be creative. I want to be different. I want to always do something that's different. But I realize there's patterns to life. You can't escape yourself, right? Yourself is designed a specific way that repeats itself so that it survives, right? It has to cycle over itself so that you feel like you have an identity, that you're something, right? And this jumps back to the other, what I was just saying is that we want to see what one thing is versus another thing. So if we're acting confusing or always different, then we're not sure what we are, what our identity is, and that sort of thing. So I know I'm kind of getting off topic, but it's because this topic involves everything. I'm not joking around here, okay? It involves everything, and you could clearly see it. You could clearly see. I clearly see it, but the problem is I have to explain it, okay? I have to explain it, and that's very difficult because there's so much to explain, and maybe that's a good thing because I could just keep explaining. But for others, when I'm explaining it, sometimes it feels like I'm repeating myself, okay? But I just want to kind of emphasize what's happening, okay? And so colors, when you mix a lot of colors, it creates noise, okay? And what noise basically is when signals kind of cross over and kind of conflict with each other, so you can't determine what's involved in the situation. So, take for example like the radio or actual sound. There's noise. You understand that concept of noise, right? When it's just kind of static and you can't hear anything, you can't hear any music or whatever the audio is supposed to sound like, okay? But then when you do hear the music, when you do hear the audio the way in a clear signal, it sends a message. It sends a pattern that you can follow along with, right? It gives you kind of a sense of direction in life, okay? So that's kind of interesting to think about that, okay? A direction, okay? Why is that good? It's neither good nor bad, but we tend to lean towards having a direction because it sustains life, basically. All life has a sense of direction. Because if they didn't, they'd just kind of spin around and diffuse themselves, right? Become neutralized and absorbed by everything else. They'll just kind of dissolve into the universe, okay? So the universe has these two dynamics going on. So one dynamic that dissolves everything, and this other dynamic that kind of fuses and creates a distinction, creates lines. So you have the lines versus the space, basically. And I like to talk about it. I like to think about this. And I feel like it's very important. That's why I'm creating these videos, is to bring awareness to it in this unique way that I've developed. Okay, I'm kind of getting into explaining myself, and I know people don't like that because they're more interested in the actual information, the distinction. They want to see the line and follow it along. I'm bringing you along this line, okay? I'm trying to. So, what else is there to talk about here? I guess I will pause for a moment and think about what else to talk about, because I've kind of said everything that relates to what I want to share, but there are other things and that I could talk about, but then it would create a long video. Like I could talk about sound, I could talk about how waves reflect off surfaces, how, you know, molecules create matter in specific ways that crystallize or melt. You know, you have this different direction you could go towards, a more crystallized, structured way of being versus the opposite way where you just kind of melt down and become absorbed and you know, blend in. So you have that with artwork. When you're creating artwork, you're crystallizing an image that makes sense, that kind of sends a message, that says some specific thing versus something more abstract that's kind of difficult to discern or interpret because, I don't know, there's no clear identity to it, or there's multiple things involved that become mixed. So there's endless subjects to repeatedly show this process, and I don't want to bore you with it. But if you are interested in it, it's very interesting. So I'll pause for a moment to think about what to talk about next.